Call this what's today? December 18th meeting of the city special session of the City Council. Into session, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome to this special council work session of the City of Frederick City Council. Tonight, we will be focusing on the Neighborhood Advisory Councils, or NACs, system and the work of the Ad Hoc Neighborhood Engagement Committee. We invite you to listen and learn with us this evening. To ensure that we remain focused on the topic at hand, we will not take general public comments during this meeting. If you have general public comments that you want to share with the council, you can do that at any time by emailing citycouncil@cityoffrederickmd.gov or scanning the QR code, which is on the board over there. Or you can participate in the next regularly scheduled meeting on Thursday, January 15th. At the conclusion of tonight's presentation, and with agreement for the rest of the City Council, we will open the floor for public comments specifically related to NACs and the information shared today. All right. Thank you. And we'll start with council comments. We'll start with Councilmember Shackelford.
No comments, thank you.
Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Council President Diaz, for bringing us together so quickly and understanding our eagerness to get started with the work on this term. The neighborhood advisory councils were brought up a lot during the campaign by those who had awareness of what NACs are. But more generally, we heard from people that they want to feel part of a community, that they want to know what's going on with the city, and they want the city to seek out residents and to value their input and to address their concerns. So thanks again for holding this meeting.
Council Vice President Nash.
Thank you. I'm going to do something a little bit different this term, and I'm going to aim to do this every meeting, but we'll see. Best laid plans. So districts provide us with an opportunity to showcase unique aspects of our neighborhoods and unique things that our neighbors are doing. And so I wanted to lift up somebody that Councilmember Taylor and I met at our budget session that the mayor held, Tim Langowski, excuse me. He has been working tirelessly to make improvements in his neighborhood of Stonegate. He has worked on pedestrian safety issues. He has worked on towing concerns, everyday quality of life things that I think sometimes our neighbors don't get the credit that they deserve, and I wanted to lift up his hours of work. Councilmember and I did vow that we would go and tour his neighborhood together and visit him after the hullabaloo of inauguration, so we will endeavor to do that, but I just wanted to lift up his work. I also did just wanted to also lift up the work of the previous council. We were tireless in our advocacy. Councilmember Shackelford and I were 100% aligned on this to bring development review back to the NACs. And we heard that reflected in the mayor's inaugural speech. And I think credit where it's certainly warranted. That was an effort for the neighbors, the NACs, to not give up on that. And I just wanted to say thank you publicly to the mayor for including that in his speech, and thank you to everybody who made that a priority and brought that back to our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Brem?
Thank you. In my travels around District 3 leading up to the campaign, neighbors would often say, wouldn't it be nice if we had a forum, an organized, structured forum, whereby the city could report to us what's going on and we could report to the city what's going on? And of course, that's the whole purpose, but not the whole. That is a critical purpose of the NACs. So I'm delighted that we're taking a look at this first up on our agenda, and I'm looking forward to the revitalization and the great work that this team has put together. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Scott Lasher. I'm thrilled to be here. You know, everybody considers this, or at least I hear often, the context of low-hanging fruit. And I, from the very beginning of my campaign, never viewed the NACs as being low-hanging fruit at all. I think it's just of paramount importance to what we're doing right now. The most important part that I kept hearing out on the campaign trail was that we, the city council, was failing to make it a reciprocal relationship, that the NAC members, the residents, were very prepared to share with the city council what their issues, concerns were, but that at some point the council wasn't as responsive as the residents would wish. So my goal, not low-hanging fruit, very important fruit, is to make sure that we, council, develop a system where we can be most responsive to the interests of the residents.
Good evening. I am so excited to dive into this. I think that public engagement is something that came up a lot on the campaign trail. People want to be engaged, and I think re-engaging the NACs and reinvigorating them is a really excellent way to do that. And I love this idea that Councilmember Nash has brought up to highlight people in our NACs or in our districts. And I see here tonight Gail Peterson, and she is the NAC coordinator, one of the NAC coordinators for NAC 6 and in my neighborhood. And I think that one of the things that makes our neighborhood unique is in part the work that Gail has done with our NAC. And I would love to see that throughout all of the NACs and throughout all of the neighborhoods. So shout out to Gail Peterson.
Thank you. And like everyone said, how the NACs were going to relate to districts is something that we heard throughout the campaign in almost every different forum that came up. And I was glad to see that the mayor mentioned it in his inaugural address, which is why we picked this as the first kind of session, not a regular council business, but to hear some of the work that has been done before. And I love the idea of recognizing folks from the different districts. That's something else that we heard a lot during the campaign, and we have some ideas on how we're going to do that. But I do want to recognize the members of NAC 8 from District 2, just A, because it's the best district there is, and also there's 3 of them. So Mr. Stoic, Mrs. Churchill, and Mr. Derby, who are here, thank you for coming. They're very involved and very critical part of the NAC 8, so thank you. All right, and with that, we'll get started. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Taylor to get us started.
Okay, thank you. I want to invite up Kevin Sellner and Gail Peterson to give a presentation. So these two were or are a part of the Neighbor Engagement and Ad Hoc NAC Committee, along with Liz Tinker, Jennifer Rodriguez, Jackie Parks, Natalie Gibson, Lance English for some time, and then myself. We were tasked with looking at the resolution and to see if there's anything that we would like to change. we looked at over 50 cities to see how they ran something similar to the NAC. And we determined that we actually have a really good program. There were a few things that we thought could make it function better. So I'm going to hand it over to Kevin and Gail to take us through the proposed recommendations.
Well, thank you for the invite. As the first presentation to the new council, we're very excited that it's the NACs. So Libby didn't mention, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Libby Taylor didn't mention that she was the chair of that group and did a fantastic job. And as you'll find out, she is very level-headed, easygoing, but very effective. So anyway, the NACs are looking forward to working with all of you. Gail, as I think Sarah said, is a coordinator for 6 and 9, NAC 6 and 9. And Sarah's, sorry, I'm calling you all by first names. It's very important to recognize that Gail is the most active coordinator across the city. Her NACs hold community events. Her NACs pester the bejesus out of the city for safety issues. She doesn't let up. And as you'll find out, you probably know already, but she doesn't mince words. And she's very direct at what her neighborhood needs. So she is a model for what we all should do. So thank you, Gail. Okay, so can we have the next slide? Oh, we're doing it? Do you want to do it?
No.
No? This way? All right. So as Councilwoman Taylor said, we had some relatively crude guidance on what we could do as the NAC committee. So here's an overview of what we attempted to do, and you'll see in the recommendations we think we completed most of this pretty thoroughly. What are the problems that were out there? What are the key elements of NACs and what they do and what they would hope the city does with them and back to them? We also wanted to look at changes and additions to the NAC guidelines. The guidelines are from over 10 years ago, so revising them would be appropriate. And I didn't say this, but Gail will jump in multiple times to correct me when I misstate or she wants to elaborate a little bit more. So please do it. And then there's some additional recommendations you'll see at the end. Next, oh, it's me. So here's the challenges addressed, and I think Ms. Taylor said it best, and you found out during your campaigns, there is a resident feeling that, in fact, the NAC's influence and participation within the city has declined steadily over the last decade or so. It was, when I first came here in 2015, it was NAC 11, because I live downtown. We probably had 30 to 40 participants at every NAC meeting. Derek would be there occasionally. Councilman Shackelford would be there several times. Former councilperson Josh Boakey would come in. So we had some good cooperation. The highlight of those NAC meetings was the presentation by developers about any proposed development in that particular neighborhood. That has been lost. It now goes to the community outreach meeting. That's a very comprehensive overview, but it does not give the assembly of residents that appear at NAC meetings the opportunity to weigh in collectively. So if you've ever watched one of the outreach meetings, it's not very well attended, and there are few call-ins. Oh, sorry. So it points to the low resident engagement. Thank you, Gail. Another big issue, though, is the lack of awareness of the residents that there is a NAC. Councilman Brem brought that up, and it's very apparent. And in fact, in NAC 11, where we were 30 to 40, we're probably less than 12 participants now. The elements that we want to maintain from our recommendation is the overall purpose, is cooperation between the city and its neighborhoods. It has been one way in the past few years. The autonomy of the NACs, we would like to be as autonomous as possible, but still be representative of city activities, neighborhood activities, but only have limited requirements of official coordination or leadership by the city government. We want to be able to communicate with you. I know this sounds perhaps poor presentation, but almost as equals when we're having dialogue. To bring up the points, listen, you give us feedback, and that's the way we hope it would work. The number of NACs, we did not decide on a number because at the time the districts had not been established, so we did not form specific ideas on numbers. We think at the time when we had 12 NACs that there were many neighborhoods out there that were well represented by some number of those, but the district consideration that the mayor has put forward is probably a good one, and I think we're all looking forward to that, working through that in the next month or months. And as Gail has pointed out numerous times, the NACs give the community, the neighborhoods, a sense of itself. Neighborhood development, cooperation, projects, all the things that Gail and her team has done, we would like to do everywhere. Here's a schematic. The fly swatter shape up in the top left, that represents the white squares are the members of any NAC. Then there are those few, 5 within the bracket in the fly swatter are the coordinators that would be elected by the members. There would be a liaison that would be elected by the members that would be represented or be participating in a NAC liaison group. The NAC liaison group has direct communication with the county council and the mayor. We have to figure out how that's going to overlap with the community cabinet or that the mayor has stated he's favoring in his inaugural address, but it's a step that is very similar to what we have in mind.
Can I jump in?
Yep, go ahead, Gil.
I can't stand it. I'm sorry.
No, go.
Okay. The most important part, whether it's the structure that we actually put together 2 years ago or an amended one, the most important part of it was that there was a circle of communication. So how that actually is laid out, in my opinion, at this point is still something that needs to be worked through. But essentially, the NACs having, committed people. Here's the thing. We got to start at the bottom. We have to continue. We have to be committed, okay, all of us, to engage people. Because if Kevin backed up one slide, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
The lack of awareness by residents, I don't know what the numbers are, but I'd be interested in getting them. Just in 5 years, pre-COVID, okay, what the number of residents were in Frederick and what they are today, okay? Because I think in the course of the last 5 years, our city has experienced a lot of growth. A lot of those people have no idea what the NAC is, what we're looking to do or anything. So I think that, not wanting to put the cart before the horse, thinking about it as, we have to build the foundation first. And that starts with people knocking on doors, which is you guys know that it can be fun, but it's not my most favorite thing to do. But it is something, a way to communicate with people right off, okay? To get them at least understanding. And my hope would be that that the city, because this is part of it, the city has to have a buy-in, okay? It can't just be, you know, we can have cookouts 4 times a year in a park and create some good connections. But if we want the city to be part of, and when I say city, it's you guys, there has to be something coming forward from communication outward, from you, from city council at this point, okay? So there has to be a buy-in from you out to the NAC coordinators so that they can move forward, moving through the neighborhood. Am I making sense? Okay. All right, go ahead.
Yep. So what Gail just said is accomplished by that hexagon in the middle. There's a program coordinator, a NAC program coordinator. We take the information from the NACs and the NAC liaison group, and then be the official. And again, I agree with Gail, is we don't have to do it this specific way, but we have to figure out a way to get the NAC liaison group, which is similar to the community cabinet, that information to you. And if you notice, these arrows are bi-directional. So the information would come to you. Maybe it's the sit-down meeting like the mayor has advocated in his inaugural address, but there has to be feedback back to the liaison group so that they can relay it to the NAC coordinators. And then the NAC coordinators, of course, to the members. Gail is absolutely right that members, because the residents don't know what a NAC is, that we are committed, that all of the group is committed to training everyone, and that program coordinator in Hexagon would help us in that, in distributing information out to what a NAC is for each of the districts, if that's the way we go for our NAC setup.
And what the benefit is of it. Because people are busy. People are busy. They don't necessarily want to be at a meeting. They just want to know what's in this for me, right? And what's the best way to communicate? Like, I have people that text me, not tons. Believe me, I'd like to have my phone blowing up with people saying, Gail, what's going on? It's not there yet, but I see it. I see it, and it's going to happen. But it would be great if there, you know, if there was an educational, like Kevin was saying, and I think when the NACs were first formed 20-something years ago, it was educational. This is what, you know, these are different parts of how the city runs. This is important. I was at the budget meeting for our NAC the other night, and I was very, very happy to be there. It's part of a process that I know nothing about. So for some of us that want to know these things, having that kind of an outreach is really important. So again, it's coordinating. So.
Yep. And again, the role of that Hexagon program coordinator is critical to what Gail just outlined. So we would like definite constant communication and establishing on the website, here's what a NAC is. And you bomb them. You bomb our residents, whether it be through the radio or through TV ads or whatever, and just to keep harping on what the NACs could be and should be in the city. Because the more that we can document to our residents that, in fact, here is a representative group for you that will allow us to interact with the council and the mayor, and they will give feedback back to you. So, all right. So the liaison representatives, board of liaison, that's a step above the NACs. So each NAC would nominate or elect a liaison to serve on this one body. In the previous diagram, it was the circle, black circle around. That's the body that would have the direct communications with the program coordinator as well, we hope, as with quarterly or 6-month or at least annual meetings with elected officials. In the previous diagram, you'll note in the blue area, those bidirectional arrows, those are constant. That's the program coordinator's responsibility. If a NAC brings up an issue, I want another statue on Carroll Creek, maybe it's going to be Ron Young, who knows? Then that coordination, the program coordinator would be undertaking that, and then the feedback from you or the mayor or the departments would come back, go back to the liaisons, and they would distribute it back to the coordinators and the members.
Could be handled by the representative, the district.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, Gail was just saying it could be handled by you, but from what we saw in the past, usually you all are very busy, so that we would expect that you could do that regularly. We would hope that's true, but we're going to bomb you with a bunch of issues beyond many of your normal activities. So, all right. So this liaison would act again as that deliverer of information to the council and the program coordinator, but receiving, expecting, and a mandated response back from you. I know that sounds like we're overstepping our bounds, but we don't want it to be a unidirectional exchange, because there's not an exchange when it's a unidirectional. So the liaison representative would receive that information back from you, ideally as a written. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but it might be a paragraph. Safety issues, yes, we're going to enforce speeding laws. That would be a new idea here in town.
Hold my hand. Okay. Here's the thing. It is a new day. It's a new day, okay? Everybody in this room knows what the issues have been and will continue to be, okay? But I'm an eternal optimist in that once we have the program, the nuts and bolts figured out, okay, you guys are hearing us. We're not, first of all, we're not going to blow up anybody, okay? There's nothing, no bombs going off. We're going to have, we'd like to see, timed meetings or whatever, like 3 times a year, 4 times a year, whatever. I mean, we definitely see benefit in doing it quarterly, but you all might not be able to accommodate that. So we just have to work the nuts and bolts out. But the ultimate conversation will be two-way. And part of what we continue to hear is that there's, things have been brought up to the city through the NAC, through different avenues, okay? And things don't get, there's no answer. There's, no acknowledgement that an email was received. And this process will help eliminate that feeling that nobody's listening to me, okay? So I don't need to be part of this because I'm wasting my time. So it's just it's common courtesy, it's good customer service, and it's just the way to build community. So that's what we're going to continue to advocate for.
Can I jump in real quick? Thank you all so much, and you're explaining everything really well. Just for the rest of you, what our formal recommendation is for this liaison and this liaison board. So like you said, that would be elected by the NAC, so it would be an office, like a treasurer, vice, any of that. So that would serve that role. And they would look at the trends and problems that are happening that are brought up often in their NAC meetings, and they would bring that along with the other liaisons from the other NACs. They bring it together, and they'll do some problem solving if those issues haven't been resolved. So there will be a quarterly meeting is what we propose, a quarterly meeting with this board of liaisons to discuss those issues. And sometimes there might be someone who's very familiar. Oh, I dealt with that last year, and this is what we did. So yeah, problem solving is going on. And also, okay, and then they'll write it in a report that will go up to city council and the mayor quarterly. There will be a meeting in person, and city council and mayor will have to respond in writing back. So that, we were thinking that would help with that issue of not getting a response. The issue, or the response might be there is no response, but at least it's out there and there's some accountability in that two-way conversation. What I was going to start to say, and I think we'll talk about in a little bit, also a really great role for this board of liaisons is to support other NACs. So we see some NACs are thriving and doing really well. Okay, what are the best practices that you're doing? How can we do that in my NAC? Or there's a NAC that hasn't had very many people and they need to recruit more people. So then there can be some training that's going on. NACs can work together just to engage more people. So it's not just writing this report and talking to city council, it's also just supporting the NACs as a whole. Okay, thanks.
We should have let Libby do the whole thing, but really. So here's some of the
We tried.
responsibilities.
She made you guys do it, so.
So you can see some responsibilities right now that we've added in for the coordinators. There would be agendas and minutes that have to be maintained and just submitted in to the program coordinator. They would be responsible for setting up communications and publicity. The city does give small grants to the NACs to move that forward. So we would hopefully use that much more thoroughly than we have in the past.
$1,000.
Yes, right. And then there would be planning.
What it is, tell 'em.
Oh, Scott, yeah. So it's about $1,000 a year, and that is what is allocated, appropriated, but if you don't use it, it just goes back to the city. So it's not we're not flying off to Cancun, unfortunately.
Not guaranteed either. It hasn't been guaranteed. Moving forward, we'd like to see it actually in the budget.
Then, as we talked about and Ms. Taylor brought up, the liaison representative has major roles. They would have to attend all NAC meetings, and that would be logical because they're elected by that NAC, so you'd expect them to be there. As she said, they will be reporting these high priority issues to the other liaisons, and then you find out that in fact you have similar issues. Road safety is one, development might be another one, but if you can go in with multiple voices, then in fact we might be much more effective than if we're going solo as a NAC. The training, Ms. Deller brought that up. We would assist in the training through the liaison representative committee, and they would definitely assist us in the communications and publicity. The role of the program coordinator becomes large and important. So we're not quite sure, and I'm sure all of you and the mayor have to work this out, but I believe the city now has 10 communicators on staff. So if we could figure out a way to pigeonhole or dedicate some committed time to that NAC role as a program coordinator, that would be fantastic. And then there would be a request that the mayor and the, as you can see, board of alderpersons, maybe the city council instead, would attend these quarterly meetings that we talked about, and then provide that feedback and dialogue, and help us identify NAC champions. And you just started doing it, by the way, by your district. Oh, I want to recognize this person in that district. Well, that could end up being a NAC champion. Needn't be, but it could be.
Oh, Kevin, can I jump in about the NAC champion?
Sure.
So that was something that Jennifer Rodriguez talked about a lot. And she was thinking more of a city council member being assigned to a NAC.
Oh, that's
And that's kind of what we're looking, that's, what it's looking like right now too. So for them to attend those meetings and to be closer with the NAC. So that's why she meant by NAC.
That's
champion.
true, and I apologize, you're right.
It's been almost 3 years, so.
So here's a list of the new meetings, Planning and Development Review Conference. That would be essentially an ability of the liaisons, members, coordinators, and any staff or elected officials to get together and actually help plan out what we would like to do. Social gatherings and service projects. Gail has set up many social gatherings in her NAC. Service projects, whether it be tree planting, cleaning the alleys here in the center of the city. With the new development that's coming, Wren Quarter, the warehouses in that area, it might be helping with stream restoration. So there's things that we can do. The Board of Liaison Representatives would meet as needed, but at least they would meet quarterly, at least, if not much sooner. The city officials and the Board of Liaison, the Liaison Committee, would essentially get together, as we said, at least quarterly, hopefully. It may turn out that can occur because of other commitments that you have, but that's just a reality of practical government. There will be a citywide NAC coordinator enrichment opportunity, and that is to maybe have someone like Gail come in and say, here's what we've done in my NAC, what could we do in these other NACs? NAC 12, for example, has been inactive maybe up until the last 2 years or so. Now they're pretty progressive and moving forward with some really good ideas, good coordinators. So that their enthusiasm is just carrying over into their residents and actually into the other NACs, which is really good to see. And then resident forum, maybe there would be something annually, biannually, where we could essentially pull all the NACs all together with any of the residents, all the residents that would like to come. That's why we would like this dedicated funding in a way so that we could actually hold such a meeting. So hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory. The addendums we can get to, I think there's one coming up, I think. But anyway, the general information, we came up with a NAC area map. And excuse me, that will likely be very different now because of the district setup that we're exploring, that communication structure flowchart. In that case, I think that's where we, either through the liaisons or through the active coordinators and the liaisons, we could actually sit down with the coordinator, the program coordinator, and figure out how to most effectively use all the tools that are out there, radio, TV, Frederick News Post, whatever it might be. City and volunteer information, Gail's absolutely right. There's nothing official right now, but we would like to identify specific responsibilities for, and we have in the guidelines, what members are, their responsibilities are, what the coordinators' responsibilities are, what the liaisons must do, and then the program coordinator as well, and what we hope you will do, because that part is what's been missing in the past. You want to clarify anything?
So it's just a way of doing business. It's as simple as that. We just need to have everybody on the same page, all neighborhoods, all streets, they all have their own flavor, and nobody wants to, I want to celebrate everybody. Diversity in the city is like the biggest, best thing, in my opinion. So let everybody have their way of showing up and being who they are. But when we do business, let's make that across the board. Everybody's on the same page.
So we did go through pros and cons. I'm not sure that we need to go through this now, but please look at the slide, and if you see things in there that you would say, well, how did you arrive at that particular support or negative? We explored over 50 other community organizations like NACS in other municipalities, and the pros and cons of whether you had very large or 10 to 12 NACS or 5 to 7, they're listed here. The issue for some of us is that the districts are actually diverse within the district. So making sure that within district diversity is embedded in the new NACS, I think is, with your help, we can do that very well. I don't want us to essentially think that maybe, you know, if we go to districts, we can just stick with what we've had in the past. Let's figure out, okay, how do we engage a larger number of diverse communities from each district in that NAC? So, I don't know. Okay. Okay, this is some of the nitty-gritty. The Land Management Code needs revision, so we're hoping that we can work with the city, whether it be through the NACS, whether it be through the community cabinet, whatever, or any, certainly NAC coordinators very familiar with their neighborhoods. Many of us in NACS and outside of NACS are very concerned about the Land Management Code being a little out of date. Form-based code seems to be this dangling promissory note. You know, the East Frederick Corridor had great opportunities for following through on some of that. It was actually stated somewhere in one of the documents that, in fact, for all the small area plans, we might use form-based code. How can we use that if it's not been adopted yet? So again, in all of those, the NACS could weigh in because they represent the neighborhoods where, in fact, the Land Management Code has relevance and is important. I would also say, although we didn't talk about the city code, which is an extension, or, for example, the adequate public facilities ordinance is embedded in the city code, so we're making sure that we have the city code aligned with the comprehensive plan and the Land Management Code, I think is important. The second bullet is very important to some of the NACs. The infill development within the city, the extensive annexation process that goes on. I think many of the existing neighborhoods are very concerned about both infill and annexation, and we'd like to hear why from the council or the mayor some of those things move forward kind of predetermined. And, you know, we annex, okay, if we annex, is the goal infrastructure for those larger communities out there? Is it school capacity isn't addressed in many of the annexation? So we need to have that type of dialogue. And what better way than the NAC that represents where the annexation is going to go occur? One-year review. Because this is so new, we would hope that there would be a review and say, well, is what we all work out to be the next NAC effort, is that functioning? We have one of the members was not in favor of the liaison committee because it's too burdensome, too many layers. Maybe that person was right. We should assess that and find out. So a one-year review we think is critical, and make sure that we can revise accordingly. The next bullet, of course, falls in that same thing. The NAC program review process has to be established so that we can embed whatever we come up with in the one-year review back into the NAC program. It cannot be, the NAC guidance and resolution can't be as 10-year separate effort. It has to be much more frequently looked at and make sure that it represents the residents. And then the city funding, Gail already mentioned. We would hope that it's going to be in the budget and be allowed to, with the city's, of course, oversight, making sure that we could use it to increase the representation and participation of the residents in the NACs.
Part of what I know I heard from the former board members was that, I'm backing up for a second. What I'm hearing now is more support from Mayor O'Connor and hopefully this city council to return the developer to the NAC so that we can get back to people engaging and being able to be aware of what is coming in their neighborhood, okay? And I think part of what I have heard from people through the last couple of years is that, I love that acronym NIMBY, not in my backyard, right? So there's so many acronyms, and I would like for all of the kindergarten people, and I call myself one, in the room, that when you guys are actually speaking with residents that don't know what the city acronyms are, okay, that you try to be mindful that, the LMC, the FBC, all of these acronyms, it's taken me 4 years to kind of get my head around what they are, okay? But NIMBY, not in my backyard, I know what that one is. So that was part of what there was some hesitancy from the former board that privately, a lot of times, people would say, the NAC people, they're crazy. They just want to complain. And I don't know that that's the truth. I don't know that that's the truth. I do know that there are people that's their mode of operation, and that's how they want to engage. But I think most people can be reasonable, okay, and can understand something when things are explained to them in a way that it makes sense. So I believe that you get better buy-in, I keep using that, from people when they feel respected and heard, and even if you don't agree with the proposal, and I know a handful of you guys a little bit more personally than I've known others, and I know that I'm not always going to agree with the business that you guys need to do, and I'm perfectly okay with that. But what I would hope is that there would be some form of communication to explain why you had to, like we had Gabrielle Collard at our meeting, and she explained a couple of times. She came and explained how the land management is written in such a way that prevents certain things from being done or whatever it is. And it's not just that you all don't want to do something. It's that you're being guided by things that have been decided. So, not to continue going on and on. The other thing that I think is really important, because I would like to see whatever this model is, and as it matures and needs to be tweaked and changed, but it's something that can't be tweaked and changed at the whim of somebody. Is the word codified? Councilmember Nash, what's the word that I need here?
I think codified's great.
Thank you.
will do, yeah.
That it's actually a law, right? That it's actually the way that we do business in the city of Frederick. And it hasn't been in its current form. So, and I'm not mincing words, I want more money for the NACs. That's it. I want more money for the NACs. I want us to operate and be able to do that and give people something to be excited about, and they'll get excited.
Gail, real quick.
Yeah.
More money. Can you talk about in terms of what that entails?
Yeah. Do you want me to?
Or you or Kevin,
what-
yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Like, how much money?
And what for? I mean,
Okay,
yeah.
so I don't know how to put the numbers on it.
No, just
Councilman
talk about
Shackelford,
concepts,
but
not necessarily you have to
Okay,
give me
so
an amount.
current budget for the NACs right now, if there's 12 NACs, $12,000 is the budget, okay, that I'm aware of, okay? So if we doubled that and we were able to use, because I can get signs, I have 50 signs for NAC meetings, and they have shown to increase, there's been, that investment has been shown to increase people coming to our meeting, okay? So there's a benefit to it. But we need communication. I don't know what that looks like, and I want to be part of that conversation where we're just brainstorming these kinds of things. But, I know that communication is important. I don't understand why we don't have a page in the Frederick News Post weekly. I won't say daily, but weekly, why there isn't, an upcoming events for the city of Frederick in the Frederick News Post. I understand that costs a lot of money. I know that it does. But, there was some conversation in one of our meetings about the water bill hits every resident. The water bill comes in the mail for every resident. And putting it, you can put something in the water bill. I mean, there has to be a way to, people, we were talking about the website the other day, the city website, and not everybody has a computer. Not everybody is savvy. I committed to Mayor O'Connor to actually download the iSpire app on my phone. I am not computer savvy. Anybody that gets my newsletter knows it has at least one typo, and I have to redo it every time. So not everybody does things the same way. So we have to be able to touch people where they are. And I'm not going to pretend to know all of those answers, but go ahead.
About the question about what we use the budget for, some things that we were talking about were these neighborhood get-togethers. So that would be the food, that might be the bouncy castle, that might be entertainment. And also wasn't mentioned, I don't know if that would be relevant to this or not, but welcome to Frederick packets, where there's, so there were ways to use this money to reach people.
So we've been in my neighborhood. We had about 6 neighbors that met at my house a while ago, just because I wanted to make a flyer, welcome to the neighborhood, okay, with, my information on it. I'm the NAC coordinator. This is what a NAC is, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that was ever something that was done. It may have been, but it's not now. And just having 6 people try to create one single, simple document, it was like rewriting the whole the website. So I kind of lost interest in it. But, just something simple that is printed, that can be passed out, put in the neighbors, a new neighbors, because we're already talking on my streets about, champions or whatever you call them, somebody that, how many people, new people have moved in to your 3 blocks? I know of 7. And before our neighborhood get-together on January 17th, I intend to go to those 7 houses and say, welcome to the neighborhood. And we're going to have a potluck on January 17th, and we'd love you to come. So and I'm going to pay for that myself, okay? Because it's important. But those are the kinds of things that if the neighborhood had, or if the NAC had its own a budget that it could work with, would make it easier. Okay.
I feel so. That's part of the deal. Hello.
Hello.
No, I feel so naive in all of this, and I feel like I keep hearing about NACs at some really, what do they say, 30,000 foot level or something, that I'm not sure where we are in terms of actually designing a program that has all of the requisite elements to make it successful. We haven't decided on the number of NACs, for example. So when you talk about submitting something to the mayor's budget, who's going to submit it? And how do you determine what that submission should be? Because it's dependent upon, at least in part, on how many NACs there are. At every level, it seems to me that we're very airy in all of this, that we're not very concrete in terms of what it is that, okay, we are where we are. And I got to tell you, when I read all of the materials that Libby sent to me, it was wonderful to read it all. So thank you for all the work that you guys did. There has to be, we have to go a lot more steps, we have to take many, many more steps than we currently are taking. Or else we find ourselves, I find myself, in the middle of a conversation which just seems to breeze along about the NACs and the gift of them, and yet we can't bring it into a reality. So there has to be, I'm not suggesting there has to be another committee after another committee after another committee, but I think there has to be the intent to have a very concrete design of how these operate. What does it look like? I was at a NAC meeting with Gail the other day, like you say, the other day. And the issue, very singular, very specific, very narrow issue, narrow to me, not so narrow to the people that was really important too, but I didn't know what to do with it. In other words, this NAC, arguably, if there are X number of NACs, say there are 12, say there are how many ever registered voters, you're talking about thousands of residents represented by a specific NAC, theoretically. The issue was the noise of pop-up food trucks behind showroom on a strip mall on East Street. And it affected tens of people, 20 people maybe, and at that NAC were 5, 6, 7, 8 people. And I had the most difficult time getting my mind around how to make it all work, how to make it work for a region represented by, I mean, as few as 5, as many as 12 NACs by this design. How do you make it work? How do you actually give it the representation that you want to give it? Anyway, I guess I'm babbling to say that we need a lot more structure in enacting the NAC by concept. And I would like that to be our focus. And to me, all the fundamentals I know I'm not talking into this thing. All the fundamentals exist. But now the point is, all right, let's get started. How many NACs should there be? Should there be 5 or should there be 12? Let's get there. Let's answer the question. And the pros and cons were solid. I have nothing to add to the pros and cons. What I have to add is the ability to answer the question. If somebody puts to me the question, Scott, what do you think is the proper number of NACs based on what you know, as ignorant as you are about all of this, tell me what you think. I'll tell you what I think. And so this is where we need to be, because then if I say, I think let's start small, let's take some of the burden off of the city side of that reciprocal relationship, then let's start there. Let's charge somebody with the task of actually making a budget recommendation to the mayor now. And if it's $1,000 per NAC, that's $5,000. I think that's nothing. But then, again, I'm naive in all of this. I don't deal with the budget as I will soon deal with the budget. But man, as fundamental as you are describing this, its fundamental importance, you got to pay for it. You got to support it. You've got to do what is necessary to give it an opportunity for success. And I'm not convinced that we're giving it the opportunity for success. So I would again propose that we have a very defined structure. How does it look like? I mean, you've got the sort of the advisory structure to it. I think that's solid. So now take it the next step. What is the expectation of getting back to me? I live behind that showroom, and every Tuesday night I get blasted by the sound from this pop-up truck. What's the answer? Is the answer that I call the police looks the other way, said, well, it may be outside the noise ordinance, but I'm not going to really attend to it. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. That it's not outside or even if it is outside the noise ordinance, we're not going to worry about it specifically. Anyway, I want specifics. What I don't feel like I'm getting are specifics. I want to be very instrumental in designing this and moving it forward with a purpose. And that, to me, could start, you've got the structure, the internal structure per NAC structure. I think now you need to define how many NACs there are and how you're going to fund them and how you're going to create this reciprocal dynamic.
So I'm going to jump in, Scott. Sorry, Mr. Lasher. The details of the operations of the NAC are in that diagram that I put up there. I think the biggest drawback, and Gail's referred to it, is communication with the residents. So, as I said, radio, television, Frederick News Post. As you know, in the Frederick News Post now, there's a calendar of events in this, right behind the front page. So what if there was a dedicated, paragraph, NAC 6 is doing this on such and such a day. But I think one of the big issues is awareness that NACs are even out there and what do they do. So,
Well, I think
So-
the budget question would be something that would be
Right.
handled during the budget process. So we're
Right.
not determining that today.
But-
As far as the number of NACs, I think that's part of the conversation we're going to have moving on. Today's meeting was more about getting information, so later on we can have that discussion. I was going to ask for both of you if you had ideas, but we'll get to that in a second. But going back to what Councilmember Lasher was saying, the budget proposal for increasing or maintaining the budget at the same rate would be part of the regular budget process. it would not be a separate budgeting process. I know that the mayor has stated that he wants to look at how we restructure the NACs. We're not going to determine that today either. We're just gathering information. But if I can just take real quick and just really brief, I know it was not part of what you were doing when you prepared this document, but your really brief answer on your thoughts on the number of NACs. And the reason I ask is at the NAC we're in my district could be very easily workable with one NAC. One district, one NAC, it's kind of what we have now. But I know with some of the more geographically distributed NACs, you know, what happens in the neighborhood where the council member Hempel-Rani lives is not the same as Amber Meadows, but they're both in her district. So real brief, what your thoughts are on the number of NACs.
So what I think would help us give you a specific answer is you just said one NAC for your district. Maybe in Peter's district, it's one NAC, who knows? But each of you could say, I have 5 distinct neighborhoods, so I think we ought to have 2 NACs or 3 NACs in my district. So if you give us that feedback, that would allow us to come up with a specific answer. Okay. I am worried about, without identifying which NAC, which district, there seems to be a separation of the people who live there and the people who are running the NAC. And I would like to see that we develop a structure, like Scott was saying, that says, how do we engage all residents in that, so that we make sure that all residents are participating in the NAC discussions. So that's a difficult thing. That's pie in the sky idealism, but I think we have to figure out a structure, and maybe it's weekly FNP updates, or maybe it's we set up a hood meeting where in fact we entice as many people as we can get to come there. We'll give them free coffee or something. I don't know what we do.
So, so your answer is that case by case for district?
Yes, for me it is.
Yeah,
for
Gail?
me it is.
Part of what is not unique, I guess, to a city, but in our districts is like in District 1 that hasn't had, you correct me if I'm wrong, hasn't had a lot of direct representation, mainly because there's a lot of there's housing units. It's apartments and condos, right? So, so I kind of, like in Warman's Mill, I know that they have, what are they called? HOAs, okay? So you could have a grouping of HOA, and I know that it's bureaucracy and nobody loves the word except me. You could have the HOA people submit their feedback to a NAC or a liaison or a NAC coordinator, right? So, because what we're trying to figure out are trends or common things common concerns, okay, or common good things, okay? So, this HOA has a president. I think that's how HOAs operate. So I don't know if I've answered a question, but that feels like a way to be able to pull it together.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from up here?
A process question. Does the NAC Engagement Task Force still exist? And can we ask the task force to research stuff? Or is that not fair?
Yeah, Council Vice President, you can help me out on this. We met several times with the coordinators. One of the things we heard was kind of put it on pause. There was, because some of that coordinators were relatively new and they wanted to kind of catch up. I don't know if we might need to convene, Council President may need to convene that, or I can be a part of it as well, convene that and come back again. Because I think the other part in this is, cautionary wise, is the NAC does have to be all things. And similar, and the caution is that the NAC's trying to be all things, and we hear from residents in various sectors. So some of these things, the NAC doesn't have to take on everything, the whole the whole pot, so to speak. It can do what it needs to do in necessity to work with the city to make it effective as possible, but it doesn't have to encompass everything. And I think sometimes if we're not careful, we're trying to make it, the NAC has to be everything. NAC has to do this, do this, do this, do that, and do this. And then we lose it because we're trying to do everything. And we hear from residents from all different sectors, and so the NAC doesn't have to cover everything. I think it's important it's effective at what it needs to do in engaging residents, communicating, of course, addressing issues, but it doesn't have to do everything. And I just want to caution us in that approach.
Yeah, so Derek, the thing that would help us engage more people is if the council members are approached on an issue and they're not active members of a NAC. If you were to call up Gail in NAC 6 because somebody has come in and said, oh, I need a speed bump on such and such a place. If you would give us feedback and keep it anonymous and say, here's the issue that was just brought to me as an individual council member, then at the next NAC meeting, Gail or a coordinator could bring up just the topic and say, okay, here's an issue that we think we should address, and see if we can get more of the NAC members to participate. My worry is in the Board of Aldermen, when we presented one time, the last time, somebody on the board said, you all are trying to do what we're supposed to do for you. In other words, we're the elected officials, so therefore, the NAC should not be pressing forward with trying to do these things. And we totally disagree. We think the residents should have a voice into you that can still be one-on-one, but if you would relay back to us what that thought is, then we can cover it in our next NAC meeting.
I think there are several things. I think maybe reconvening those NAC coordinators, again, to kind of assess where everything is, and then, because many of the NAC coordinators, of course, are far along in their approach than others are. And so maybe reconvening that work group, having another conversation, also then I know we have recommendations, but also putting a timeline on that in regards to, okay, these are the steps we need to take, instead of us doing paralysis by analysis of saying, we're going to, but, and the approach could be, Kevin and Gail, just looking at 2 or 3 and not trying to look at 10, and then assessing that in 6 months to a year. But my hope is that we would be effective at what we do best and not trying to do everything. Master, jack of all trades, master of none. So,
Yeah, and I think going to Councilmember Brem's question and what Councilmember Shackelford said, one of the things that we're doing, that we're going to do next as a council, is to set up our committee structure, our rules and procedures. So that's not even started to be set in stone. So at that point, there will be a place to maybe reconvene the task force, or form another one, or assign this issue to a committee that doesn't currently exist. And just as a procedural clarification, this is so we can kind of learn where we are right now. This topic is going to get discussed a lot. Originally, was not going to allow public comments, but I do want to allow some time for that. But this is not the final time that we're going to bring this up, and we are going to have a lot of time for general public comments at a meeting, and also we'll probably assign this to a committee at some point. So,
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
And then I promise I'll disappear. It was never the intention, I don't believe, it was ever the intention of the NAC Resolution Committee, okay, especially when we got started and we started to understand that there was a lot more to this that we were asked to do, but I'm not even sure that the board really grasped how much there was to it, okay? And by the time, there was just so many moving parts in the city happening, okay? And we just kept plodding along, doing the best we could with what we had to work with at the time. So now we're in a different place. So we had, what did you call it, the NAC task force? We had that group, right? And I was grateful to see that the NAC coordinators, that some of them have been doing this for 20 years, okay? I mean, you always want to, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. I mean, we are kind of reinventing the wheel, but there's always rich experience from people that have been doing this work for a long time. So it was always my belief that we needed, it wasn't, I only know what a NAC means for the last two or 3 years, okay? So people that have experience, they needed to have a seat at the table. I think that when an organization is trying to develop something, bringing all of the stakeholders together to have input, not final decision, because the final decision on how this thing will be built will be you guys, okay? But to have the stakeholders in the room so you can discern and decide what the best path forward. And I'm looking forward to being part of that conversation, and good luck.
And the challenge that Council President Diaz has been, the NAC has been looked at for 20 years. And so here we are now.
Yeah.
Anything that particularly says people engagement that hasn't looked at for 20 years. The city has changed. When the NACs were first created, it was 40,000. Now we're at 86, 87,000, 47 more thousand people. Larger, we talk about annexations, all these things, land management code, all these things have occurred. And this process has not been looked at for 20 years. And now here we are.
Any other questions from here?
I'll make a longer statement when it comes to council comments.
Okay.
So.
All right, well, thank you both for your time. We originally were not going to have public comments, but I do want to open that up. Can I just have folks line up since we didn't have to sign up? Okay. All right, so if you want to make public comments, this is the time to do that. Since we didn't have a sign-up sheet, you can just line up. Time here. There is a time limit of 3 minutes. When you do make your comments, please state your name and your address or general area where you live, and we will be limited to 3 minutes. Go ahead.
My name is Steve Stoicky. I've been a resident of NAC 8 since 1985. I moved here from Washington, D.C. It was a very different world back then. It is extremely diverse at this point. I live on David Lane off of McCain Drive. And I wanted to offer something that we did to, because what we're really talking about, what I heard tonight, was we're talking about residential participation. For learning, for structure, for judgments. How do we do that? In my neighborhood, it was pretty limited, very limited. So I came up with an idea, and we went to the HOA. I said, why don't we once a year pay for an ice cream truck and give free ice cream to all the kids in this neighborhood for a few hours? And it was a miracle. Because all of a sudden we have people who, multi-language, multiple beliefs, multiple heritages, all talking. It has truly improved that neighborhood. We don't see half the trash that we used to, and people are very much more friendly. Now, my point is, we have this funds in the NAC. Now, what we did in my neighborhood ran $400. And my HOA management company went, oh, we're going to do that every one of our places we manage. So my point being here is perhaps if we went to fund an HOA to stimulate their participation in this. Because what we found, I've got people now talking to me who never talked to me before. You know, it really changed a lot of stuff, especially since we appealed to the children, which in my neighborhood, there's lots of them, and there's a lot of families that are struggling, multiple jobs, all, you name it, it's there. It's David Lane, okay? But I just thought perhaps with what was presented here tonight is how do we engage the neighbors? You know, how do we get participation? Well, sometimes you got to just offer something. And it was the best $400 my HOA spent in 30 years. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.
Is it on? I'm Scott Darby. I'm from NAC 8. I'm going to be the thorn. I agree with Mr. Shackelford. If people want to tell the city what to do, then we need to set it up like Washington, D.C., and ANC, where the people are voted in and they can tell the board what needs to be done. And if I have to wait 3 months to get something from NAC to city and back, I'm going right to you all. I'm not even going to worry about the NAC, because that's what you said. You have your coordinator, then your super coordinator going in, and then you want the NACs to do the agenda. Well, then if you want to do that, then you're going to have to give the NAC coordinators the permission and the authority to ask city officials to come talk, like the parks people, because right now we have Siobhan do it for us. She does it. But if we can't do it, then we can't do an agenda. And the mayor said something about signs in the newspaper. And you've all talked about the newspaper. We tried the signs, worthless. The newspaper, how many people get the newspaper anymore? Very few. Radio, I don't listen to the radio. And I'm not the only person that doesn't listen to the radio. I wish I had better ways we've beaten our heads against the wall to get people to come. We were thinking about, they brought up the thing about going around to houses. Nobody wants to walk to everybody's house or every apartment to put it in. The water bill. The water bill was worthless because it only goes to the owners, not the people who live there. Is that still the way it is? Okay, it goes to and we used to have a flyer in it, and when we got it, it was already outdated because everybody doesn't get the water bill at the same time. It's quarterly, but not the same. So, good idea, but it just didn't work. I wish there were better things to do to get it to work faster, better, but I don't really want to wait 3 months to get something to turn around, because it's be quarterly. That's what you say, to go to the city. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
My name is Dave Schmidt. I live on 6th Street here in the city, and I first thank you for opening up for public comment. I know a couple of us have a lot to say, so I want to go back to, and I believe it was the Councilmember Shackelford that mentioned that this was a problem that we had 20 years ago, and we solved that problem 20 years ago to varying degrees depending on the administration through the NACs. It is not the same problem we have today. I appreciate, if you notice, as soon as we went to public comment, everyone started talking about resident participation. That is the problem we're trying to solve, is how do we get feedback from the community, and how do we allow that to better inform decisions that are made by the council. You can do that individually. You have relationships inside your communities, and you can do that formally here through public comment. But how do we solve a systemic problem, which is a very specific set of people in the city have a much outsized voice than everyone else? I want to state clearly, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate the amount of effort and time that was put into the committee and into this document and to everyone that has been trying to solve this problem. But having read this very thoroughly once and then refreshing myself again today, it reads as a document and a solution for a very specific set of people in the city. for a demographic that is not the residents of the city. It's for the people that, and I've participated in the NACs since I first bought my house in Millstream Drive back 2011, up in I think it was NAC 2 at the time. None of it works. It doesn't matter how great and beautiful the structure looks like if no one's going to participate in it. To me, the first thing that needs to be solved is how do we get the residents to participate? How do we get the residents to feel like their voices matter? That is the problem to solve. And it's not the newspaper. And as, again, the public comments stated, it's not sending out a water bill to homeowners and things like that. These are a solution to a specific set of people in the city that I love very much that want to have influence on your decisions. That's why they want to meet with developers. That's why they want planning staff to come and do demonstrations for them. The goal, again, is how do we get the people that live here in the city to feel like they can participate and have a say in what happens in the city, and that's everyone. And so my suggestion, my request is that you start with that problem first. How are we going to, where have we successfully in the country gotten community participation, and then model something after that? I don't call it a NAC, call it a DAC, call it whatever you want, but that's the problem to solve first, as opposed to taking a 20-year-old solution and trying to fix it for today. Had it been all along that way, had we fixed it along that way as we went, perhaps we would end up with something now that reflected the technology of today. But we have to start with the residents first. Thank you.
To push this or okay. Hi, my name is Christian Benford. I live on Carroll Parkway here in the city. I wanted to echo some of Dave's comments, especially when it comes to community engagement outside of the NACs. I moved into my apartment last year and had only heard about my NAC just from coming to different meetings where people are mentioning that, oh yeah, my NAC does this or whatever. So I tried to go to my first NAC meeting, which would be NAC 9, which I think meets with 6. And there were people standing outside the building for 20 minutes past the hour. And it turns out that NAC meeting had been postponed because there was a neighborhood walkthrough for something for street safety. Obviously very cool, something I want. But that wasn't posted on the NAC site or the portal. But apparently, you know, I called the person that was the coordinator or the city liaison, and they said, oh, well, you need, it's on the newsletter. Well, how am I supposed to know that if it's, I wasn't privy to the newsletter because I couldn't be at the NAC meeting because the NAC meeting wasn't that night. So there's a communication gap that I think needs to be addressed first. It's almost like this restructuring, while I think great in mind, is trying to treat the symptom and not the root issue. So again, it comes down to that community engagement part that Dave was mentioning, and figuring out how we better engage people, especially people maybe under the age of 35, and making sure that people that don't also participate in their NAC still have a worthy voice when it comes to city decision-making and planning, especially when it comes to their own neighborhoods. Maybe they can't participate in the NAC because they work the night shift, and they can't, even if it's 7 o'clock, which I think is a great time. I'm really glad the NACs meet as late as they do, making sure residents are still empowered, even if they can't participate in the structures that the city provides. Thank you.
Any other public comments? If not, then I'll open up to, one more.
My name is Robert Van Rens, and I'm a resident of NAC 8. I have lived in the Hillcrest neighborhood for, it'll be 15 years this year, and or 15 years in 2026. And I first tried to get involved in NAC 8 when I moved to the neighborhood 15 years ago and couldn't get anybody to return my emails or phone calls to save my life. So I have, since COVID, gotten involved in the NAC in its current iteration. But one of the things that's become apparent to me is that for my immediate neighbors, for the people that I live right around, they don't participate in the NAC because the NAC doesn't solve their problems. It doesn't address any concerns that they actually have. Most of them don't know that the NAC exists because there's no outreach or information whatsoever that reaches them about the NAC unless somebody literally goes and tells them about it. There's nothing available in Spanish language regarding the NACs. None of the NAC business is conducted in Spanish, so for a lot of them, even if they were to attend, it would be very difficult for them to access it. And the fact that they're much less concerned with things like infill development, which is something that, as far as they're concerned, is somebody else's problem. They'd like to know more about things like why their property taxes go up, why their water bill goes up, stuff like that. These aren't really things that the NAC has any intention of addressing or ability to address. So I think that to some degree, we need to look at, like, you know, what are the issues that the NAC is concerned about, and what are the problems that it's trying to solve for the residents. The fact that when my immediate neighbors go to the NAC meeting, they don't see themselves represented at the NAC. They don't see their concerns being presented in the agenda, so they don't see the value in continuing to participate. I mean, these are all things that I think if we want to see greater participation by the residents, we need to, like, get down to what is the NAC doing for the people that it represents, and, you know, how do we make sure that we're actually encompassing these kinds of concerns and issues. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? All right. I'll open it up to member comments. We'll start on this end with Councilmember Hempel-Arani.
I just want to thank you, Kevin and Gail, for coming here to share your report, and council members Shackelford and Taylor for your work on this. Thank you all for being here. I think public engagement is part of the real joy of this work, and I don't want to speak for everyone here, but I think it would be safe to say that we all ran so that we could help our communities and so that we can engage with our neighbors. And so I think this is a really exciting thing as we go forward. Thank you.
I have nothing to add. I think I probably added too much already, but the answer is this is great. We have to have these. Cesar, it was wonderful that you put this together. I'm absolutely thrilled. And the fact that Libby and Derek were so involved with Kevin and Gail to put this together originally. Anyway, thank you.
A couple things. First, from a customer service perspective, and Gail, you mentioned complaining. A complaint is an opportunity to improve. So not all complaints can be addressed, but all complaints should be heard. Related to that, in terms of constituent services, I view the NACs as being an amplifier and a supplement to council members and not a replacement. And I'm grateful that the NACs are there to help with that role. Third, as the city grows, I think NACs are going to be critically important in connecting neighbors and neighborhoods with City Hall. A city of 100,000 people needs NACs just as much as a city of 40,000 people. Probably needs more NACs as it relates to that. Some thoughts for research and exploration, and again, that's why I asked if the engagement task force is still in force, and if not, we'll have to figure this out. But one is, I just wonder if at the liaison meetings, to cut down on the nonsense of that's not my table, if we couldn't have the police and DPW and permits and planning in the room so that when an issue came up that was more than one NAC or even just one NAC, the staff was there to hear it and respond at the direction of council. Third, I wonder if Celebrate Frederick, now we're back to city commitment to the NACs. I wonder if Celebrate Frederick might be a resource to help with planning social events that the NACs might want to put on. I wonder if our crack communications team might figure out how to get the word out to our residents outside of water bills. Again, we've got this huge communication staff. Let's put them to work making sure that the city residents are aware of NACs and what NACs can do and what they are for. One suggestion that I've had is that NAC coordinators, and watch me spend somebody else's time and money, but one role of NAC coordinators, and Gail, you're already doing this, would be to meet and greet new neighbors with a packet of information, part of which would be information about the NAC. That may not be fair, but just as an idea for consideration. I wonder if we should formalize council member attendance at NACs. I think there's value in that. And now let's get back to NACs versus districts. District 3 has 4 NACs, 9, 10, 11, and 12. The good news is that 9, 10, 11, and 12 represent coherent but diverse neighborhoods. So I can't tell you that the issues in 9 are the same as 12 or the same as, that's not true. There are 4 distinct neighborhoods with 4 distinct needs. If I were to attend all of those, which I am inclined to, that's 4 nights a month. If we meet monthly, which I am inclined to have the groups meet monthly if they wish to. So I'm wondering, and this again is for group consideration, if we had NAC coordinators for each of those neighborhoods, but we had one NAC meeting that would include the coordinators from those 4 neighborhoods so that it would just be easier from that standpoint. That may be a terrible idea. I just want to add it as into the hopper of things to think about. One thing that Cesar and I have talked about is council meetings out in the neighborhoods. I wonder if the NAC liaison meetings might take place out in the districts themselves. Just again, we go to the citizens as opposed to the citizens coming to City Hall. Again, just for consideration. I would, just as a final thought, well, a couple. One is, I absolutely believe that developers need to start with the NACs when they have a proposed project and before they go to planning and spend the time and money to put in a planning application. Just a conceptual plan of what they want at that early junction to get that neighborhood feedback, because the neighborhood is going to have to live with what the developer is envisioning or planning. Yes, there should be a revisit once the planning department has worked its wonders with that developer, but just that opening shot. But before Galleria shows up, come talk to NAC 11 and talk about what Galleria may or may not encompass and get that neighborhood feedback at the very start. And then the last is, I really do believe that NACs are for more than just passing information from the city to residents and passing information from the residents to the city. I believe that NACs have a crucial role to play in helping, again, with addressing the needs and concerns and getting to solutions as it relates to those in these different neighborhoods. My neighborhood, your neighborhood, our neighborhood, based upon the issue at hand. I'm sorry, one more thing. I also wonder whether or not City Council ought to have approval of anybody who's nominated to be a NAC coordinator. And the reason I say that is it prevents having, well, as with other commissions and groups, it puts a council imprimatur on who becomes a NAC coordinator as opposed to just the mayor doing so. So things to think about, and that's why it's going to need your brain power to help formulate whether or not this makes sense. But so that's it for me. Thank you.
Council Vice President Nash.
Sure, a couple things. I appreciate Councilmember Shackelford bringing up the meetings that were had, because he and I find ourselves in kind of a weird place, because I felt like during the conversation about, through the campaign, it was like those meetings didn't occur, and there were 3 of them, and they were very well attended. I think there were about 25 people in the room for each of those meetings. I missed one, February, April, and July. And the February meeting, I came really energized, and we were going to pass the resolution that had been drafted from the committee, and it was like screeching tires. Like, people were like, put the brakes on, and they were right. Like, they were like, put the brakes on, because I was like, we got to get this done by the end of the term. We were like ready to go, and the opinions in that room was slow your roll, because there's a lot of discussion about the district government. So that's all to say that I know that we've been talking about this a long time. I know that it's been a work in progress. I totally endorse the idea that it's been a long time coming, but also we have a lot of folks that are not in this room that have very strong opinions, and that's always going to be the way that it is. But I was really surprised at just the interest level of the new NAC coordinators and how much they wanted to participate in the conversation. So why do I bring that up? Because in the aftermath of those meetings, Clara provided for us a document, and it's in our backup, and it says NAC ad hoc key issues to address, and it's the NAC ad hoc key issues. And in that document, it outlines all of the policy questions that need to be addressed, in addition to some of the really important things I think Peter brought up, and I'm sure some other things that we all are thinking about. But if I may, I think that we have the foundation to start sort of answering these things. At the end of the day, we're just going to have to say up or down, right? And we're not going to make everybody happy. And, we're so blessed by the work that was done to get us here. I met Councilmember Taylor through her work to lead this committee. It was that meeting and how she ran, the discussion, and how she accepted our feedback, which some of it was, our proverbial, our collective we. Some of it was hard, and some of it, I think, seemed as though that work wasn't valued, and the way that she gracefully took that feedback and came back and said, okay, what can we do now, really informed me that she would be a tremendously amazing council member. So I'm thrilled that this was our first meeting. I'm thrilled that we're moving forward, but just looking forward to answering the questions that have already been drafted. Scott mentioned the process. We are definitely in a decision-making posture and ready to hit the ground running and get these things going so that we can make the improvements that I know that we all want to make. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind words, Councilwoman Nash. My thoughts are kind of all over the place, so this might be all over the place, but the purpose of the NAC is to bring residents closer to the city and the city closer to residents. So that was, when we were thinking about this, that was on the front of our minds. And there isn't a whole lot of changes that we were recommending. It was how to improve it. We looked at scrapping everything and starting from the ground because of the issues that were talked about. People don't feel heard. It's hard to get engagement, all of that. And we explored all of that. We really, really talked about it. And the heavy lift on volunteers that would take, we decided that was too much. So the NAC had good bones. We just wanted to give a little bit more direction, a little bit more flexibility. And the issues we were hearing were that there wasn't a lot of trust. People go to the NACs and they would say that they have an issue and nothing would happen. So the liaison committee that we are proposing will help with that trust and accountability. So it does not mean that you need to wait 3 months for these quarterly meetings. No, the NAC coordinators would go to the city every time there's an issue like they currently do. But when you get together with the other NAC liaisons, be like, man, I'm going to the city a lot for this same issue over and over and over again. That's the kind of thing that you bring up. Those trends that you're seeing, those major issues that you're seeing, and I'm not getting a response, or I am getting a response, but this issue keeps happening. That's the kind of stuff we're looking at, and you're going to share it with us and the mayor. So if there's something policy, at least for us on our side, policy-wise that we can do to address that, so it doesn't keep happening. Those are the kind of things that we want to bring up. Dave and Christian, I hear you about that engagement. And when I first joined this committee, I didn't know what a NAC was. I thought I was there to talk about affordable housing, and I just wanted to get to know my neighbors. So we try to allow flexibility in the resolution for NACs to do that however they see fit. And so we didn't want to be prescriptive of, you need to do a neighborhood engagement activity once a month, once a quarter, because it's different depending on where you are, and also it's really difficult to get volunteers to have to take on all this extra stuff. So we want to encourage the NAC coordinators to do that and to give them that flexibility. So as an aside, as a new council member, thinking about my priorities and what's really important to me, and it's building community, people getting to know their neighbors. We have a loneliness epidemic. People don't participate, they're not engaged, they're more politically extreme when they don't know the people around them, when they don't trust them. So thinking about, okay, how can I help? How can City Council really help promote that? People getting to know each other. And again, I went back to the NACs actually, because like we have a system. It doesn't really work that way right now, but it's there. So we have a system, let's just figure out how to make it work better. So I appreciate all of these ideas and all of these recommendations. It does not mean anything is set in stone. We're gonna keep talking about this. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Thank you, Gail, Kevin, for leading our efforts, Councilman Taylor for leading our efforts tonight. I guess I look at this, I don't say differently. I think I've been on record, because I was a part of the initial task force, is about empowering residents. I have a problem with the city basically taking the lead on this. And what I mean by that is, at one point during the COVID, residents were told not to meet because the city controlled it. So during the time where advocacy should be strong and community should be strong and grassroots should be strong, at one point the city told its residents, don't meet. And I'm a little leery of the city leading this because at some point the city controls it and the city is going to control it as it sees fit. And I know we're all up here, we all appreciate public engagement. But sometimes these roles are vastly different, and sometimes they're in, the way the system is sometimes they're in conflict with each other. I'm all in favor of empowering residents, for residents to be empowered in their neighborhoods, for them choosing their own people to lead them. I'm not in support of me having the decision about who leads your community, because I'm going to make that decision based on what? You're going to make that decision based on who you think in your community should lead you. I'm not in favor of a council person being mandated to go to a NAC meeting, because how's that? If they don't, what's the repercussion of that? What's the, I don't use the word penalty, but what is the penalty, or what that can be? I'm all for, one, that residents empower themselves. Two, I'm all in favor of planning and development, of course, being in each NAC. I'm all in favor of staff being available to answer questions in respective NACs. And I'm in favor of financially supporting the NACs. But I'm more in favor of those neighborhoods, such as we mentioned, because all those neighborhoods are different and diverse. What's an issue in one neighborhood may not be an issue in another neighborhood. And those neighborhoods should be able to come together, grassroots, advocate for how they see fit. The city has a responsibility of addressing those issues, of communicating those issues, but I do not want the city controlling this, because we already see what happens. And what I mean by that is, it's going to be a natural fight. Natural fight is the city controls it, neighbors want their voice to be heard, and now all of a sudden there's already a fight within the system. And that's something and to some comments is, that's the barrier. So we're trying to solve an issue which we create, which is naturally the creation has already started. We need to relinquish control. And people need to have the control, and then when the people have the control, that'll then inform us about then what decisions need to be made. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for coming out and for giving us such great input. The reason this got selected as the first thing that we meet on is because of the importance that I think we all feel that involving the community needs to have as we move forward. I think the city's has made some steps to make that better. The district model, for example, I think helps with that. I think the fact that the mayor mentioned improving or adapting the NAC system to the district in the inaugural address also shows the importance. But I think one thing is very clear is that eliminating the layers between the residents of the city and the government, whether it's through us or directly to the city or through the NACs, is critical. So how are we going to do that? Well, that's going to be an ongoing conversation. And like I said earlier, this conversation isn't going to end here. There's been a lot of conversations, so we want to start moving towards solutions and not just keep having conversations. But it's definitely a process that we need to expand, improve. So thank you again, everyone, for coming out here and for wanting to be a part of how we improve that. I agree with Councilmember Brem and Councilmember Shackelford about attendance from the council to the NAC meetings. I go to all the NAC 8 meetings that I can, and when I went to like the second or third one in a row, I was like, oh, you're here. Like, it was a surprise. But I have one. Councilmember Brem has 3, 4, right? So mandating, I agree with Councilmember Shackelford that mandating can get complicated. But we do need to, I think the fact that we're also engaged shows the commitment that we're going to do that in some way or another. So more to come on that. And then I just want to take a real quick moment. It's been a week since we all got inaugurated. We've gotten a lot done, I feel. But I want to specifically thank some of the city staff that has helped us and me particularly get some of this done. So Claire Jackson, our legislative assistant, Phyllis Haynes, the city clerk, Lance Duvall, who's our leads the production team, and all his team, and city attorney Rachel Gray for just being there and helping me make all this stuff that we have gotten done happen. So unless there's anything else from up here?
And the IT department.
Oh, yes, and Matt and the IT team as well. Got to always remember the IT team. All right, if there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.